Hi, welcome to another session from the Users blog, and I'm going to do a session on MIDI basics, going right back to how we create MIDI tracks and what we can do with the MIDI editor. So I've got a blank session here. What I'm going to do first is going to insert an instrument track. I'm going to use Command Shift and N or Control Shift and N if you're working on a PC. Go to Stereo, go to Instrument Track, and we go Create. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to name that first, and I'm going to call it Expand, and then I'm going to go to DigiDesign Plugins, and I'm going to go to Expand here. So wait for that to open, and straight away I have a synth in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a kind of piano sound in, because we're going to start off with an electric piano. I'm going to start with the Mark II electric piano. So there's my sound in. Now, if you look at this track at the moment, there's nothing in there. And what we can see is got the keyboard settings here for showing the keyboard of different parts playing a keyboard. So we could actually look, if we wanted to, at MIDI notes here. But we're not going to do that. We're going to go to MIDI note settings. So into the MIDI editor. Now there's two ways to get into the MIDI editor. The one way is to, once you've got an actual part in there, double clicking on that part, and it will open the MIDI editor. If you come down here and see this arrow and click on there, there's our MIDI editor window there. So we're going to bring that up, and at the same time we are going to reduce the size of this window here. So let's just pull that back down a second and make that smaller, because we don't really need to see that any larger than that. Then grab this window and bring it up. Now we have our MIDI editor here at the bottom, and we can basically see here a grid. Let's take you through all the different parts of the MIDI editor. You've got your smart tools here, just as you have there, but they work slightly differently than when you would be using them in audio. It's telling me the track. I've got pencil enabled at the moment, so when I start to add things in with the pencil, there, and I did that by double clicking, it's the instance of this electric piano here from Expand Channel 1. Now, interestingly as well, is you would have heard as I started to move the notes around that they actually sounded. And that's because we have a setting in the MIDI editor. If I open it as an independent window for a second and close it there, we're going to go to this version now. Open that, double click there. The MIDI editor window opens again. And we have these different options here. So that's the sound it's playing. And depending on how many tracks you've got, you could then drop down and choose that. That's the size of the note that will be inserted if I double click. And so if I wanted to put, let's say, quarter notes in, double click. And then we have here the velocity with which they're going into as well. So between 127 and 1 for each one of those. That's interesting as well. Let's just close Expand for a second. Then this is the grid it quantizes to here. You can either have the grid mode or nudge mode that it works on. So I'm going to go to grid mode for now. And this is the size of the grid. So we could say quarter notes. And now you can see here, it's everything will snap now. If we've got snapping on to quarter notes as I drag them around. Now the more tracks we get, and if we added a second track in now, we went to track new. Let's, because we're using an instance of Expand, I'm going to have 3 additional MIDI tracks. And now we're going to call those different names. I'm going to call those drums. I'll call that bass. And I'll call the third one, just come down here a bit, lead. So now we've got some other parts, and you can see here we've got different things that we can see in this window. Now these show whether things will actually show up in this editor, and this is the one that you're editing. So depending on which one you're editing, you want to click this pencil here. It will choose the editable track here, which is really, really useful. So we can just move around there. We don't have to go out of it. Now also show you a couple of other things as well. You've got solo of the part you're working on and mute. You've got score editor in 4 parts there. Close that again. Just hit that, come back to the main MIDI window. They've got normal zoom and single zoom. This is how you expand and make notes shorter or longer, just grab them with that tool and pull them out. Now it's in grid mode again, remember, so you move them to the size of a note within that grid. You can use this to sound a note. And this note to select regions, like that. And this note to then move stuff around as well. Just by grabbing it with the finger, moving it like that. Now, because it's a smart tool as well, got other things. So if you go to Smart Tool, then right mouse click will give you other things as well. So you can do it all here. You do things like the MIDI real-time properties as well. If you click on that, that will come up here. And then we can add real-time properties that are applied as the thing's playing, which are these guys up here, onto the track you're working with. So for example, we're just going to go back up here to expand. I'm going to open it. I'll give this 4 parts. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to rename that piano because it's going to be our piano track now. And this second track is our drums. So we'll go to drums. And we'll go to drum part, so we will go to, I think actually what I'm going to do is going to go to loops here, and we're at 120, so I'm going to find a 120 loop to work with in this 4 on the floor there. So now if I get to drums now, I go to middle C, and we make sure here this is going out. If we just close this window down a bit again, reduce the size of it for a minute. Here, this needs to go to expand child 2. So now when I move those notes, now as you can see, it's on 23 velocity, so we want it to be playing at 127 when we put it in. So if we take that back out again now, and put it back in, now it's coming in at 127. Now the cool thing is as well, if you come down here, then you've got your velocity window, and we can make that bigger and smaller, and we can choose that note. And now here as well, see in this window, if that has to be switched on, that basically means that the MIDI notes will sound when we start editing them. If we turn that off and move the notes now, you get nothing. So make sure that's switched on if you want to hear it. Okay. And the cool thing, of course, as well, is as you move stuff around here, it tells you in this window what's going on down here. So very, very helpful. So let's quickly build a track up. So what we're going to do is grab all of that and delete it for a second. And I'm going to step mode for a second. I'm going to delete those 2 parts out. Go to the drum parts. We've got the pencil here, there. And we're going to put 4 on the floor for 8 bars. Let's play that. Okay, what we're going to do now is put a bass part in here. Bass. And just play that in. So let's put that part into loop. Play. Now, the other thing about MIDI is when you're recording in MIDI and you want to record on a loop, you don't put it into loop record. You just put it into loop play. You only use loop record when you're recording audio. If you want to overdub, this needs to be switched on, which is called MIDI merge. We're going to put our click on, and then we're going to start this going, and we'll turn that count as well. Now what you can do then is you can either, if you're not in the MIDI editor, you can double click here and it opens that part now. And let's just zoom in a bit on it. And what we're actually going to do is we're going to actually take this away altogether and open this as a full window on the MIDI editor. And we go here and we go MIDI editor. We can now see in a full window and zoom out a bit. Let me show you what you've got. You've got all your notes there, and I can just zoom in and out of those notes there. And straight away you can see here, that's early. So what you can do is come into the tools and you can either grab one of them, like this, and take that back, and let's hear that now. Let's get the transport window to the front. The other thing I do, I'm going to go back a second, put it where it was, grab all those notes. You've seen me do this before. And what I then do is I choose a quantized value, and on this one I'm going to go for 1/16th, and then I just tap this front note here. And here we heard there's a double note there, so we need to delete one of those. And to delete, you just double click. Remember, we're in a loop mode. Another one there. Double click that. And lose that. So there's our part. Let's go back to what we're working in here. And we can put the next part in now, which is the piano. So come up here. If you press that. And we just try part out. Someone like that, we're going to put it in loop record again, and off we go. I've got some sustaining there, I don't want that in there, so I'm going to do it again. Now is if we go here, we can see the piano, and that's now showing. Let's go into the main MIDI window. So what we're seeing now, we're seeing the piano in red, we're seeing the drums in green here, and we're seeing the bass in orange. So we can see all four parts if we want at any one time. Choose one to edit. Let's just take that back. I'm going to go to piano now. Come here. I'm going to turn the other ones off because I don't want to see them because it can get very messy. And I'm just going to tap these guys into place. And again, at the end, you can do the same as well. We can just tap notes. So there we go. The basics of getting MIDI recorded and edited in Pro Tools. I hope that's been a help, and I look forward to having you back on the blog soon.